Thank you for that comment, Rory, on my last video. That last video made some bold claims, given how little detail that I put into it. And your comment is like a mini essay on the intersection of the local global frame versus the left-right frame. So respect. I really disagree with a couple of things. I'm gonna try and keep this brief. I'm not going to get too into the left versus right populism. That's the heart of what you're saying, and there's something to it. But the problem I have is that it's all so abstract. And I'm going to pivot to my personal motivation here. The reason I've lost faith, I don't trust leftist politics at all, is a lot of things, but the straw that broke the camel's back was COVID. And there was a working class revolt against the COVID controls because they were indisputably the worst hammered and suffered the most at the hands of our response globally to COVID. But the frame that was put on that, and the left-wing establishment, and I mean the quite diverse left-wing establishment, was almost universally to frame it in intersectional terms. They dehumanized these protesters. And rubber bullets were used on protesters at the Shrine of Remembrance here in Sydney. I'd never seen anything in my life like this. And the left was applauding it. And it was applauding it, it was dehumanizing these protesters, focusing solely on the most antisocial ones, and using all the energy there to avoid discussion of what legitimate motives lay behind this, like the working class roots of this revolt against COVID control. The way they de-emphasized this was focusing on white privilege and male privilege, basically. This is my personal thing. This is where I'm coming from. This is why I react to this dry response. But to bring it back to your points. So the left-right stuff is all very interesting, but in practice, it's all framed as rightist and negated this way. This seems like not a coincidence. Because while you disagree that left and right is irrelevant to the extent that I do, you must concede that what left and right really mean, as such a thing can be defined in classical political discourse, has less and less relationship to political discourse today. Like the relationship between the two is just getting more and more distant. I am quite certain you have more faith in the left, you don't see it as corrupt as me, but you recognize this problem, right? Discourse is getting totally disconnected from reality, politically. Like it's just, I mean, the culture wars just hijacked it. It's like, you know, it just doesn't seem like a coincidence. I'm not saying the global, local frame is going to resolve everything, but it's going to be a more productive conversation because it's just closer to reality. I mean, people know what it means. Left, right at this point is so arcane. There's so many levels at which the conversation has shifted. There's so many, it's like a Russian doll, like what the real meaning is at this point. Whereas global local is much newer, it's much more, it's brighter and harder and simpler. Like it's just people understand it. Left, right is way easier for the message to be distorted. And this is why almost all conversations in this frame seem to go sideways and just produce noise. Like the left-right frame seems to be making things worse, not better. And while there are people doing good work in this frame, they're only doing so by including a kind of discursive analysis in their work that allows the classical definition of left and right to slot into reality as we perceive it. So like, I don't think there's anything wrong with me just scoffing at left-right politics. And I will add, anybody who is like committed leftist or rightist is a fool, not to say split-minded. I mean, this is like the hemispheres of the mind, of the brain. Like, they have different values, the left and the right hemisphere. And insofar as one of them wins the conversation in our life, then our body suffers. And I think this is kind of what's happening. And this is an additional point to what you're saying, to what I'm saying, and you're commenting on. But they all fit together. But you're deeply, deeply wrong to try to take the left-right stuff back prior to the French Revolution. Like, there's something there energetically. You're right, there's this energetic force, and I mostly agree with your definitions. Like, I think you can frame the left as the critics of hierarchy, and you can frame the right as hierarchy defenders. But, you know, you got to explain some steps between that deep metaphysical kind of reality, that sort of almost a priori truth, and how it manifests in the 18th century in a particular way that's come to us. I mean, ancient Egypt, the Akhenaten revolution, like, is that left wing because it's a revolution?